Please.
I do.
Good evening. Welcome to the Oconee County Board of Commissioners meeting. Today is Tuesday, August the 31st. If you're joining us virtually, to comment during the public comment portions of the meeting, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom. After a moment of silence, we'll ask Commissioner Horton to lead us in the pledge. Please stand. Thank you.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, our first item of business will be to approve the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as submitted.
Second.
A motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries. Next item is statements and remarks from citizens. This is for anything not on the agenda tonight. Anyone virtually? Thank you. Any statements or remarks from commissioners? I just want to remind everybody that the road work underway on Simonton Bridge Road started today, and we'll go through the 2nd. So from 9 to 3, there will be a detour. If you want to look on the website, you can see the way around. Also, we started this week with a specialized survey for the condition of roadway. So if you see a funny looking van riding around, that's what they're doing. Also, September 14th at the Oconee County Civic Center will be our town hall meeting. It'll start at 6 p.m. The meeting will be in our Performing Arts Center there, or Performing Arts Theater. It'll be open for both in-person and virtual attendance. This is your opportunity to talk to the commissioners about anything that's on your mind. It will be a special focus on the T-Splosh that's coming up for November 2nd. Our next item is to consider a withdrawal request for rezone number P21-0136. This is for 1370 Ridgeway Road in Bogart. You received a letter in your packet where the applicant has asked to have it withdrawn. And we typically will go ahead and act on that prior to the meeting, so everybody knows it's off the table. So does anyone have any questions or comments on those? No. All right, with that, we'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the withdrawal request for rezone P21-00136.
We have a motion second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries. Next item is discuss FY22 budget amendment request. This is for carryover projects from FY21. Wes?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Board. Good evening. I come before you tonight to talk a little bit about some approved projects that have crossed over fiscal years and require a budget for FY22. They're basically 12 pretty major projects that you have already acted upon as far as approving them to move forward in a previous fiscal year. So in June 30th, we crossed over. There are various reasons that I'll talk a little bit about, but in a nutshell, these 12 projects are funded with your fund balance and various grants that we've received. And I'll talk a little bit about those, but I know you're probably thinking, well, we've seen this before, but some of these projects have a longer timeline for completion. And when you cross over fiscal years and you're using the fund balance, we just need to have a budget, and that budget will be different than the budget that you approved when you approved the project, because we've expended those funds in a previous fiscal year. So without further ado, several of them are public works projects. So you'll see the roundabout projects on there. And there are 2 roundabouts that are under consideration, and they're being engineered as we speak. And as time goes on, we gather more information. So we have a GDOT bill there that we have to pay for project oversight as well. Mars Hill widening, long-term legacy project, and Atlas Technical is the old Moreland Altobelli and the engineer of record. And there's continuing expenses for that project, phase 2 in this case. And then Epps Bridge is lane improvements up at Epps Bridge and Loop 10. And Pittman Construction is the firm of record there. And so need that 46,614 for the 22 budget, again, coming out of fund balance. The 5th item, the LMIG safety grant, we received this grant at the very end of the year. So, we pass our budget, we go through all those meetings in April and May, and we pass it on June 4th. And then we got that grant around June, third week of June. So we have to have a budget, so we have to amend that revenue. And we're glad to get it, but to spend it, we need that approval for that. So that'll be mid-state striping. They're under contract and 126,000. The Macon Highway landfill site improvements, we're on the home stretch on there. There was just a few items that had to be done in July, and then we can call that project to its conclusion. In the operations area, same thing. The project was concluded around the second week of August. And we just have a few 22 items that we need to pay out of fiscal year 22. Then the administrative building, and that one's been moving along nicely, but we have a contract for design services, and just need approval to budget that and pay some bills there. And we're having a bid opening this Thursday for the remainder of that on the construction component. Water resources, these are legacy projects here. Pressure zone improvement with 2 contractors under contract, and then your Calls Creek upgrade project as well. The public safety EMA, the fixed generators, again, another grant came in a little later than we expected, but we're glad to get that money, and we'd like to move forward with that at this time. And then senior center, another grant funded project. And there'll be a little bit of contingency money there, and we'll have to have a grant match. But again, we'd like to move forward there. And then lastly, the coroner, and that is grant money that he received. It was just a 3578 short of completing that in FY21. So we don't want to let that go to waste. So we'd like to program that for FY22. So overall, my recommendation is that you authorize the FY22 budget amendments as I just presented. And you're wondering how you've already acted on it as far as the project, how we're going to pay for it. Well, there's grants and there's fund balance. So when we crossed over the fiscal year and we didn't use that money in FY21, it went in the bank and there it stayed. And now I'm asking you just to reallocate it in the FY22 budget. So this is not an above and beyond request of something that's happened earlier. With that, if there's any questions that I could answer, I'd be glad to do so at this time.
We have any questions? Very good. You're all right for consent agenda next week?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any public comment? Anyone virtually? Thank you. Next item is discuss the pre-construction services for Calls Creek.
Good evening. Before you tonight is a request to enter into the pre-construction services contract with Crowder Construction for the amount of $110,638. The agreement calls for pre-construction services through the 60% design completion. The benefit of awarding this contract is to have a contractor perspective on board early in the process to provide us with cost estimates, constructability reviews, life cycle cost analysis, and value engineering. By adding Crowder to the team, the goal is to clearly define the scope of work, evaluate opportunities for savings in construction, equipment selection, and reducing overall costs and contingency funding. Any questions?
Any questions on that? Very good. You all right for consent agenda? Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have any public comment? Anyone virtually? Thank you. Next item, we discuss the implementation of purchase card program. Wes?
Thank you once again. Board, I'm here to discuss implementation of purchase card program for Oconee County. What it will allow us to do is streamline our accounts payable and our administrative processes. Currently, our system has worked on a credit financial transaction card system, but the P card system is a little more advanced and has a lot more oversight and management capability. So what we'd like to do is enter into a resolution with Bank of America, which is the state contract holder. And so in order for us to do that, we have to, the board has to act by resolution. They'll do a credit history on Oconee County, which will be very pleasing to go through that process, because that'll be a good outcome for us. And then once they go through those items, get their resolution, then we begin the implementation of the program. It's a long implementation, but we feel like this is the path forward that will enable us to streamline our processes. So there are no annual card fees, and we could actually get some reward points and some other benefits of the program. So my recommendation to the board is to approve the implementation of a purchase card program, allowing the chairman to execute all necessary applications and resolutions to proceed with a P card policy. And then we'll need to amend our county's fiscal policy to include the purchase card program. And I'll come to you at a later date with that. We just have to have this to get our application in, and the application process is about six weeks. If there's any questions, I'd be glad to answer those at this time.
Have any questions?
I got one. Just help me understand a little bit. Does this replaces credit cards?
Yes, sir.
And who controls these purchase cards? Are they by department, or are they all in your desk?
Right, yeah. They will be issued out to the users. Each department will nominate a candidate or multiple candidates for authorized users. They'll go through a training process, a certification process, and then there'll be what we call a card holder. And then those card holders will be controlled at the end of the day electronically through our procurement office. And they can turn those cards on, turn them off. They can put merchant codes on them to allow uses at certain locations and non-use at other locations. So every department's needs are different, as you can imagine. And so that process will be tailored to those needs specific to each department and each user. And then it's monitored by us, and then of course by the state as well, because we fall under that umbrella. So what the nice part of it is that going in a state program, they've already got a lot of recommendations and all the things that we'll need to do, applications and everything. So the folks that I'm working with, we've sat through a couple of PowerPoints and Zoom calls, and they've implemented with cities and counties over hundreds of times in the state. And so they're very comfortable with it, which makes us feel comfortable.
So the card is assigned to one person.
Yes, sir. There will be no departmental cards.
Swapped around.
Right. And I would not be supportive of that if that request was made. That request has not been made. So
individuals would carry their own PIN number associated with it. So when the card is used, that PIN is inserted. We know exactly who used that card and who is responsible for said purchases.
Yep. And it's real-time monitoring as well. You can see the transactions happening. It's just pretty slick.
Are there limits on the card that's assigned? So
Yes,
if you
yes,
gave
sir.
one to Tim, he has a limit.
yes, sir. $2,500 is very typical. And so kind of to piggyback on that, our limit right now for purchase orders is for departmental level is $2,000. So I'll probably be coming back to you for another policy change on that as well. So it will dictate a few policy changes, but with spending limits, it's very typical to modify those every few years to keep up with inflation.
They can actually get to the PO level where the card is inactive until a PO is approved, and then they can issue that card the amount of that PO actually. Any other questions? Be all right for consent agenda?
Yes.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Any public comment? Anyone virtually? Thank you. Next time we discuss disposal of real property. So as we move forward with our administrative building, which is under design now, we're going to have a few pieces of property that will be available for surplus or reassignment. We have two of those. One is the ward building right across the street, and also the elections office. We feel very confident we will not need to reallocate. And so I've asked Daniel to do a little research on what it would take to dispose of the real property. So he's going to run through that, and then we'll kind of talk about getting permission to move forward with exploring that.
It's a relatively straightforward process, although maybe not the simplest way to sell things. You've got two real options. The board would have to authorize either one of these. The first option is you run an ad in the paper for a couple of weeks. You take sealed bids, and then at some point you open the sealed bids and you specify what has to be in that. For example, that it has to be a cash sale, it has to close in 30 days, things like that. The other option is you stand on the courthouse steps and conduct an auction. We actually long time ago tried that one time, didn't work at all on a JP courthouse. And we eventually sold that property by sealed bids. And you do have the ability to hire a realtor to assist you in this. Still have to go through the same process. You still have to do either sealed bids or auction. There's some kind of obscure exceptions to all this. We don't fit any of them for either one of these buildings. So that's pretty much it. My recommendation is sealed bids. I think public auction is always a bad idea.
Then do we have the ability to set a minimum?
Yes. Yeah. And you also have the ability to not accept any offers in a sealed bid process, or to revoke them, or to not accept in an auction. They'd have to have some floor. I'm trying to remember. I think you make the auction with reserve.
The question, I assume that if we dispose of these properties, it's be simple, so the person who buys it owns it,
That's right.
plus the ground.
Yes, that would be the normal way to do it. There's not a requirement that you do it that way. If you had some, you wanted to give them a 99-year ground lease and hold it, I suppose you could do that too.
But I get where I was headed. I mean, that's a good point, but where I was headed, I mean, if somebody bought the ward building, they could tear it down.
Right.
That's right. Other than city.
You could impose covenants. I mean, if you chose to do that, you could put a covenant on it that said, I mean, you're asking me what ifs, and
I know, I'm just saying, I
yeah.
mean, if you don't put it in the covenants,
that's right.
they can tear it down.
That's right.
If they want to. Second, the last question is, what about the zoning? I mean, are these, I didn't have a chance to look up the zoning on these two buildings. Are they zoned?
Right now, they may well not be zoned because the county owns it, and we're not subject to the city zoning requirements.
All right.
We'd have to find out what the city zone would be on. And we've owned them for a long time.
But then it'd go over to the city's
That's right.
purview to
Wouldn't be,
rezone.
that's right. Wouldn't be up to us.
Wouldn't be up to us. Okay. All right.
Any other questions? Better out with moving forward to take bids and kind of see where we're at on those properties.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, so we'll just put that on consent agenda and then we'll vote on it next week in case you have any more questions come up. So, any public comment? Anyone virtually? Next item is discuss the acceptance of the right-of-way deed for Summerfield from Summerfield Construction LLC. This is for Summerfield subdivision dated August 17th, 2021.
This was one that just kind of got out of sequence, and it needs to be acted on for, because it should have been in the last batch that we did. So nothing unusual about this. It's just normal right-of-way deed. Everything looks proper and it's ready for action.
Any questions? You're all right for consent agenda on this one, Spy? Any public comment? Anyone virtually? We do have need of executive session to discuss personnel.
I'll make a motion to go executive session for the purpose of discussing personnel.
Second.
All right, very good. We have a motion, a second, all in favor? Thank you. All right, we need a motion to go back into regular session, please.
Second.
We have a motion, second, all in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Saxon,
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
we are adjourned. Thank you.